We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph and Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesubos Daf 45a. The Gemara here is continuing a brisa that's discussing three types of situations of adultery. And the first case of the adultery is, let's say you have a situation where Adam come in after she's already married, she's already in the house of her father-in-law, and they testify that she committed adultery when she was betrothed, when she was in the house of her father. And so then the brisa says, Soklin Osal Pesach Beis Avia. So then the punishment is she gets skila at the doorway of the house of her father. Kilomar, as if to say, Ru'u gidulam shegidaltem, look at this child that you raised, look what happened to this child. And the brisa continues, Bo la edim beveis avia shezinsa beveis avia. The second scenario is, let's say the edim come when she's in the house of her father, and they testify that she committed the adultery when she was in the house of her father, meaning to say, this is all happening at the time when she's an arusa, when she is betrothed. So in that situation, Soklin Osal Pesach Shar Ha'ir. There, the punishment for her is that she gets skila at the entrance of the gate of the city. And finally, the last case the brisa says, Sarcha Ulav Asof Bagra. Let's say she commits the adultery, and now already when she's brought to court, she's already a bogeres. So in that situation, Tidon Bechenek. In that situation, she's going to get chenek, she's going to get strangulation, and not skila. Rashi over here says, Soklin Osal Pesach Beis Avia Dehachik Ksiv. This is what the pasuk says. V'otziu es hanara el Pesach Beis Avia. It says you take her out to the entrance of the house of her father. V'hai bevo edim beveis chamei ksiv. That pasuk that talks about Pesach Beis Avia is talking about when the edim come after she's already married, after she's already in the house of her father-in-law. Dehabimotzi Shemra ksiv, because that pasuk is written by the parish of Motzi Shemra. The mefarish beikra ve'akrei ve'lea alma kishenisis. The pasuk says, I came close to her, meaning I had relations to her, I married her. It's talking about a situation where the edim are coming after she was already married. Ru'u gidulim shegidaltem. Look at this child that you raised. Kolomar mibayise yotzas hanevola shebozinsa. From this house, this is where this occurred. This is where she committed the adultery. Bo'la edim beveis avia. Now, if the edim come while she is still betrothed, kodem shenisis, before she's married, soklin osal sharo ir. Then in that situation, she gets skila at the gate of the city. Techsiv kiyeh nara besula maurasa votzesem. As Shneim El Sharo Irahi, that's what it says in the pasuk. You bring them both out to the gate of the city. And finally, the last case was Tidon Bechenek. She gets chenek if she's already tried as a bogeres. Kihechi deilu zanoi hashta, just like if she would actually commit the adultery right now when she's a bogeres. Lav skila ika, she wouldn't get skila in that situation. El chenek, rather she would get chenek. Techik siv skila bezinsa nara ksiv. When does it say skila? It talks about skila when she's a nara, when she commits adultery as a nara. Shenemar kiyeh nara besula v'gomer. That's what the pasuk says. So hashta nami bechenek. So now also, since she's not going to get skila had she committed it as a bogeres, so if she's taken to court as a bogeres, she's not going to get skila. She's going to get chenek. The kevon dishtani gufa ben chet lahamata bedin. Since her body has changed between the actual sin and the time she's being brought to court, ishtani ketala lechidahashta. So now the death penalty is going to change as well, and she's going to get chenek. And the Gemara here continues, L'meimra, does this brisa mean to say, that any time her body changes, like in this situation where she's being brought to court as a bogeres, so then the death penalty is going to be changed as well. Uramini, but we have a contradiction on that from the following brisa. The brisa says, Nara ha'meorasa shezinsa. Let's say you have a situation of a young girl who is betrothed and she commits adultery. Umisha bogra, it seems to be exactly our case. Now she becomes a bogeres. Hotzi oleh shemra. So in this case, instead of Adam coming and testifying that she committed adultery, he's coming and he's saying he's marrying her, and he's saying he has found that she's not a basula. It seems that she has committed adultery. So the halacha is like this. Hu eino loka ve'eino nosein meyasela. First of all, let's say it turns out that he's a liar. So in that situation, normally, by a situation of what we call a motzi shemra, where he is a liar, so he gets malchus, he has to pay 100 sela. But in this case over here, that's not going to be the case. He's not going to get malchus, he's not going to pay meyasela, because at this point in time, she's already a bogeres. As Rashi over here says, Techiksiv v'yisru oso malchus v'yonshu oso mamon benaruksiv. The halacha where he gets malchus and he has to pay that fine is when she's a nara. And that has to be at the time that he is actually saying about her that she committed the adultery. V'zeh akima sifasav gorman lo leonish. It's the twisting of his lips, meaning the lie that he said, that's what's causing him to get the punishment, and it goes by the time of the lie, and at this time she's already a bogeres. This will be explained later on. The twisting of his lips is taking place when when she's a bogeres, and that's why eino loke ve'eino nosen meyasela. Now the Brisa continues. What about if he is telling the truth? So she, in that situation, if he's telling the truth, it's going to say in a moment she's going to get skila. Vizoma meho, or let's say it's false witnesses. Let's say it turns out that really he's not telling the truth. Really, she did not commit adultery, and the Eidim are false witnesses. So then the zoma meho also, they're going to get skila. They're going to get kasher zomam, what they tried to give to her. Makdim in lebeis haskila. They're going to rise early. They'll wake up in the morning and they'll get skila. Rashi over here says, what does it mean? They get up to get skila. It means to say there's no escaping it. They're going to get skila immediately. The Gemara interrupts over here. What do you mean she and her zomamin get skila? It should be one or the other. Either she really committed the adultery and she gets skila, or the Edom are false. They're Edom zomamin and they get skila. What do you mean she and the zomamin get skila? And to that the Gemara says, Ella ohi o zomameha makdim lebeis haskila. Rather, what it means is either she gets the skila or the zomamin gets skila if they are false witnesses. So in any case over here, Rashi over here explains what's the question. Lebeis haskila alma afa gav de ishtani gufa. You see that in this case it's exactly the same case. She's a bogeris over here. Her body has changed. V'ilu zanoi hashta bas cheneki. If she was to commit adultery right now, she would get chenek. So lo amrina nishtani katala. But we don't say that the death penalty changes in this situation. We're saying she gets skila. That directly contradicts what we said in the Brisa, where we said sarcha ulavasof bagra tidon bechenek. We said that if she committed the adultery and then she's being judged as a bogeris, she gets the chenek. So which one is it? Does she get skila or does she get chenek? And the Gemara answers, Amar Rava, Rava says, Motzi Shemra Ka'amrit. Are you asking a question on our case earlier from the case of Motzi Shemra? These are two different cases. They're very similar, but they're slightly different. In the first case, you have a situation of Edom coming, and they're testifying that she committed the znus. And in that case, we're saying she gets chenek, because if she did the znus right now, she would get chenek. So even though they're testifying about something that happened earlier, still she's going to get chenek. But over here, in this case, it's not simply Edom coming. Here, it's a case of Motzi Shemra. Here, the husband is coming and saying that he found that she was not a basula. So Motzi Shemra is different, as we're about to say. Shani Motzi Shemra is different to Chidushu, because Motzi Shemra has a Chidush along these lines over here. Why? Because let's say you have a situation where a woman enters the wedding canopy, she enters the chuppah, but she doesn't have any relations yet. So Ba'alma, in a normal situation, let's say it's a regular situation, a woman gets married, enters chuppah, doesn't yet have relations with her husband, vizinsa, and at that moment in time she commits adultery, bechenek. The halacha is that if she commits adultery as a nesua, if she is not an arusa but a nesua, she gets chenek, she gets strangulation. V'ilu motzi shemra, whereas if a person would be motzi shemra at that moment in time, a person would say, I have found that she's not a basula, or I find that she is not a basula, and it's the same exact scenario where she is an asua. The halacha is, since he's being motzi shemra and saying that she did it earlier, the halacha is beskila, she gets skila. So in other words, you see that in that particular situation, by a nesua, so the halacha is, let's say again, she's nichnasa l'chuppah v'lo nivala, so in that situation, she gets chenek. Has she committed the adultery at that moment in time, she gets chenek. But if at that moment in time the person is motzi shemra on her, and it turns out that she committed the adultery earlier before she was an asua, she's going to get skila. And so therefore Rava is arguing the same thing should be true by a bogeris. Just like by motzi shemra, if the person is motzi shemra after she's an asua, she can get skila. So too by a bogeris, if the person is motzi shemra when she's a bogeris, she can get the skila. Rashi over here explains, let's say it's a case where she's not a bogeris. Below it says shemra, it's not a case of motzi shemra. Va'afila benaris, she's a nara. Ishtani dinahu, it's a different halacha. Meaning her psak halacha is going to be different if she commits the znus now, in contrast to a case where a motzi shemra said she did it earlier. De'ilu zanoi hashta cheneku, because if she had the znus right now, it would be chenek. De'ika hoav v'nichnas l'chuppah, because she's entered chuppah. Ava b'shalom nivala, she doesn't even need to have had relations yet with her husband, and that's already going to be a different halacha just by entering chuppah. Kedetani l'kamon, that's what it says in a brisa later on. Nara v'lo bogeres, besula v'lo beula. The halacha applies only by a nara, not a bogeres, by a besula, not a beula. Mo'rasa v'lo nesua, and also not by a nesua. By a nesua, there's going to be chenek, it's not going to be skila. My lo nesua, what does it mean not a nesua? Inema nesua mamish, if it means she's mamish, married and had relations, haino v'lo beula, it already says in the brisa not a beula. Elalav nichnasa l'chuppah v'lo nivala, obviously the status changes just when she enters the wedding canopy, even without relations. Alma ilu zanoi hashta bas cheneki, you see that at this moment moment of being an asua, she really would get chenek. V'ilu motzi shemra lahashta v'zanoi kodem knisa l'chuppah b'skila. But if the person would be motzi shemra about her right now at this moment and say that she committed the adultery before the time of the chuppah, at the time of the betrothal, she would get skila. Alma bo so shemra lo amrinam demishum dishtani dina ilu zanoi hashta l'shtani katala habal yedei znus to make her. You see, you don't say that since she committed znus now, therefore the punishment changes if he says that she committed znus earlier. You don't say that. Ve'elkach ki bagranami. Let's apply the same logic, therefore, to a case of a bogeres. Not only by a nesua do we say that this is the case, but also by a bogeres we should say that. Ki bagranami v'nisis. Let's say she becomes a bogeres and gets married. Lo amrina b'motzi shemra. If it's a case of motzi shemra, we don't say demishum dishtani dina dahash dishtani katol demekar, that since right now if she would commit the sin, the punishment would be different. So therefore also if she committed it earlier, the punishment is different. We do not say that by motzi shemra. By motzi shemra we should say, again, just like if he's motzi shemra at the time that she's an asua, she gets skila, so too if he's motzi shemra at the time that she's a bogeres, she's going to get skila, because again he's saying that she did it earlier, and therefore you can't bring a proof from motzi shemra to a situation of Eidim, which is the case of the earlier brisa where Eidim testify that she committed this nus earlier, again before she was a bogeres. And the Gemara continues, well, is that really true? Amar le Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua le Rava. But Rav Huna Breder Rav Yoshua said to Rava, Dilma maybe as follows. Dilma ki chadis rachmana hechadelo ishtani gufa. Maybe the chiddush of the Torah by Motzi Shemra is specifically where her body has not changed. Yes, there's a chiddush by Motzi Shemra that even if she's an asua, the person is Motzi Shemra on her and says that she committed the adultery earlier when she was an arusa. Yes, there's a chiddush over there that she gets skila. Aval hechad ishtani gufa lo chadis rachmana. But maybe in a situation, even by Motzi Shemra, maybe even by Motzi Shemra, if her body actually changed, if she actually became a bogeres, maybe we don't say such a chiddush. Maybe we say, no, once she's a bogeres, she doesn't get skila. And again, how can you say this answer? Oh, Motzi Shemra is different by a bogeres. Who says that Motzi Shemra is different by a bogeres? Maybe Motzi Shemra is only different by an asua. And so the Gemara says, Ala Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, rather Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Ishtani v'lo ishtani tanoihi. Actually, this issue of when the person changes, like in this case where she changes into a bogeres, that's actually machlokas tanoim. What happens in that situation? Titnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, as follows. Chotu ad shelo nismanu v'nismanu. Let's say you have a situation, here we're talking about a nasi, or let's say we're talking about a kohen gadol, they bring a special carbon, but let's say they did the sin before they were appointed as a nasi or a kohen gadol. So in that case, Harein kedyotos, since the sin happened before they were appointed, so therefore they're judged like kedyotos. They bring the same carbon as a carbon yachid. They don't bring the carbon of a nasi or a kohen gadol. Rabbi Shimon says, Im noda lahem ad shelo nismanu chayavim. If they find out about their sin before they're appointed, actually they're chayiv. Mishin ismanu peturim. But if they find out about the sin after they've already been appointed as either the nasi or the kohen gadol, then they're completely patur. They bring no carbon whatsoever. And Rashi over here says, Chatu ad shelo nismanu, again the Tanakama, let's say they sin before they're appointed, Nasi u'mashuach, again, either the Nasi or they're appointed, anointed as the Kohen Gadol, Shein karbonim kishel yachid, Shanasi may be seir, u'mashuach may be par. It's a different carbon. A Nasi brings a seir, a mashuach brings a par. Harein kedyotos, in that case, they bring, since they sinned when they were hedyot, they bring the carbon of a hedyot. Bekisbo seira, that's the carbon there is a kisba or a seira. Sha'ava bishan ishtane gufam lo nishtane karbonim. The point is, according to the Tanakama, even though at this point they have changed, their body, so to speak, has changed. Now he's a nasi, now he's a kohen gadol. The carbon does not change according to the Tanakama. But the second opinion of Rabbi Shimon says, Im noda lahem ad shelo nismanu dahava lo yediah v'chata v'chata b'chad gufa chayav and kedyotos. If they find out before they're appointed, so now they've sinned, and the knowledge of the sin, if it all took place as a hedyot, then they bring carbon like a hedyot. But mishin ismanu, but if they find out about it after they're appointed, dahava lecheta b'shas carbon yachid v'yediyah b'shas carbon nasi. Now the sin took place at a time when he was to bring a carbon yachid, and the knowledge of the sin took place at the time of when he was to bring a carbon nasi. Peturin legamri. Then they become completely pater. Alma, what do you see from there? Demishum de'ishtani gufa. Since the body changes, they've now been appointed. They're like a new person. Ishtani carbon. The carbon also changes. So you see this exact issue of here also when she's a bogeres, does she get the skila, or do we say no? There's a change over here, and now she does not get skila. She's going to get chenek. That's exactly the same idea. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Memhei Amud Beis.